Thank you for coming on. I appreciate your time. And so, you know, I wanted to get you on and talk to you a little bit about what you've been up to lately. And if you wouldn't mind just in throwing it out there, you can explain better what you do than I can. So I'd rather you give us the introduction and what it is you do and what you've been up to lately.
Yeah, thank you. I'm your state auditor, and before you change the channel, I do not audit any of you. I do not audit your tax returns. I'm not the IRS. I am not the Department of Revenue. I have nothing to do with your taxes besides auditing state government to make sure that our state government is spending your tax dollars appropriately, effectively, and wisely. Our office works to root out waste, fraud, and abuse across state government. We have a Bureau of Special Investigations that helps to look at different programs across the state to make sure that if people are committing fraud, that there is accountability there, and that we work hard to make sure those monies are recovered from people who have essentially robbed from the system. And we audit different state agencies as well. We audit the MBTA. We just did another audit of the MBTA's contract with Keolis and identified millions of dollars in potential savings for the MBTA with respect to the Keolis contract. We audited them for safety and performance. We just recently audited the Department of Children and Families. We looked at significant gaps in mental health services for our young, vulnerable children who are in the system through no fault of their own, and found some significant gaps where the Department of Children and Families needs to really step it up regarding how mental health services are being provided to these children and how prescription drugs, powerful prescription drugs, are being monitored. We found some significant gaps there. A lot of people think that we just do financial audits. We actually don't do forensic financial audits like some of these larger auditing firms will do. We do what's called performance audits, and that is the type of audit we're required to do under law, where we follow government auditing standards. We conduct performance audits of processes, procedures, and programmatic integrity, so to speak, in these different state entities to make sure everything's on the up and up. And we identify challenges, gaps in programs and in systems. And then we are able to make recommendations for improvements to help make government work better for those it's meant to serve. That's actually the mission statement of our office. We do look at financials as well. It's part of it. But we look mostly at how those financials tie into programmatic effectiveness, and make sure that, again, they're being used effectively and efficiently the way that they're supposed to be used. And yes, Toby, the reason why you have me on here today, we also audit the state legislature. And we audit the state legislature. We've audited the state legislature over 100 times before from the Office of State Auditor. The state legislature was always audited by my office. It's a constitutional office. I am elected by you, the people. I'm not appointed by the governor. I'm not appointed by the legislature. I am an elected official, elected by you, the people, to answer to you, the people, you know, in these audit reports that we do, and to make sure that we're working to, you know, uncover any potential challenges. And we've done over 100 audits of the state legislature. But even though that is the case, in recent years, legislative leaders have refused to comply with an audit from my office. So I brought this issue to the ballot to codify essentially what has already been the law, but to make it explicit that the general court, the Senate and the House of Representatives, our state legislature, is included in the list of audits that we are able to do, because the phrase all departments, they said that they believed they were exempt from that and that that didn't include them. So we had them explicitly added into the language of the law via question 1, which was on your November ballot. And question 1, which was to audit the legislature through my office, passed by 72% of the vote. And even though it passed by 72% of the vote, the state legislature is still refusing to follow the law, blatantly violating the law. And the attorney general is refusing to enforce the law or to represent the people I have attempted to sue the legislature into compliance. I have repeatedly asked the Attorney General to represent us because it is mandated by law that my office go through the AG's office as a state agency for legal representation. She has refused to answer our questions about whether or not she's going to represent the people, dragging this out even longer than it needs, that it's already gone on. It's already gone on for years, but dragging it out even further along. And we have some work to do, folks. So that's why I was very grateful for Toby's invitation to come on and to talk about this, because the law is being violated. Our taxpayer dollars are being spent with no accountability by our state legislative leaders right now, and it's unacceptable.
Yeah, and let me ask you a question. If we could, I know we got a lot to dive in around that whole subject, the ballot initiative, the subject of auditing the legislature. What about like your job? Is it that can you just pick any agency and audit them, or is it something that comes up on annual review, or is it something that, every 5 years you got to go into this office or that agency or whatever?
Every 3 years, we have to do an audit of all state entities. So
Every 30 years?
Every 3 years, yeah. And there are over
3.
200 state entities, and it takes a long time to do these audits. It takes about a year to a year and a half, generally speaking, to conduct an audit. So we have been hauling ass, so to speak, moving it, and really trying to make sure that we get these things done on time. And what we do, Toby, is we focus in more deeper dives in some of the entities that are higher risk, so to speak, right? So we have, DCF that I just mentioned. It's a higher risk agency. They're dealing with children, elder affairs. It's a higher risk agency. They're dealing with, the elder population, the disabled population. MBTA, high risk entity. We know there's been mismanagement through the years, and it's been safety challenge after safety challenge, trains catching on fire, lots of issues there. So those types of entities, we will work to try to do a deeper dive with the limited resources we have. And then other entities that are different boards or commissions, for example, we will go in and do what we need to do and get the audit complete. We are not able to take as deep of a dive as we would like because of the limited resources, but they do get touched from our office essentially, at least once every 3 years.
If you find something in one of your audits that does need a deeper look, can you refer it to another,
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah,
and we have done that. And we have done that. For example, we audited the Convention Center Authority recently, and we found that public records were missing or destroyed, that bids for state contracts did not exist, and they were required to exist according to the public records law, which means you can't prove that you actually went through a bidding process. We found that no bid contracts were given out unlawfully to folks, consulting contracts, for example, in the hundreds of thousands of our taxpayer dollars given out with no bidding process, and that a $1.2 million non-disclosure agreement was executed in this quasi-public agency unlawfully to cover and to hide and conceal allegations of discrimination and retaliation. Now, our tax dollars pay for these things, and this was done unlawfully. So it's really problematic. And when we found those things, we don't have law enforcement capabilities. So we do need to refer those things to different entities who have enforcement authority. So we referred over to the Secretary of State the issue regarding the public records being missing, and we referred over to the Attorney General the issue pertaining to the no bid contracts being given out and the unlawful execution of that $1.2 million non-disclosure agreement. The Attorney General, to my understanding, hasn't taken action on anything we referred to her, but maybe that's happening. I haven't heard anything about it, but we do refer those things over to different entities.
Now, when it comes to what you said earlier, waste, fraud, and abuse, it sounds like you're fishing from a stocked pond in Massachusetts. I can't imagine you can scratch the surface of the waste and the fraud and the abuse that takes place. I mean, you just looked at the convention center and found stuff. I mean, imagine if you really got under the hood of the legislature, or if you get under the hood of one of the agencies that I'm very concerned about, and is the Office of Ethics. And I don't know if that's an agency that you can audit or have audited, because I've seen very selective use of their powers. Like for one, they kind of sent this letter, 7-page letter to Brian Crevier, the Ware Police Department chief, saying how he has, violated all the conflict of interest laws, but yet I see massive actual conflict of interest that's happening at the state house level when you have someone like Mariano who's using committee assignments and stipends to get people to pay, vote a certain way or to fall into line. Like that's an actual, in my mind, violation of the state ethics laws and conflict of interest, because it ties out to a dollar amount for a vote a certain way. But yet here's, Sean Crevier, excuse me, not Brian, Sean Crevier, the Ware PD police chief, who posted on Facebook, hey, contact your legislator. And next thing you know, he's getting a 7-page ethics violation warning. And it's like, so do you get to audit that department as well? Does that come
Yes,
under your
I do
purview?
think it's important to say that we are not able to insert ourselves into any decision-making processes in different
Right.
entities, and that, those rights are reserved for whatever entity that we do audit. We look at the process and procedures and, some of the financial components to make sure that that's all being done correctly, efficiently, effectively. So their decision-making process in different agencies, we don't have any ability to go in to, look at how they made decisions, why they made different decisions about those particular things. We just look and say, were the processes and procedures followed? And are your financials in order? And, is there programmatic integrity in what you're doing? And I think that your point, Toby, about the House of Representative issues with those stipends and those rewards essentially going out to legislators. Look, that is a huge, huge problem in the state legislature. It is something where there is a system of retaliation or reward that is used to control legislators around the Commonwealth and to essentially bully them into submission to vote with the party leadership, or else your stipend will not come to you. And it's not just your office assignment will be stripped from you anymore like it was years ago. Now it's, you could have a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 or even upwards stipend that the speaker and the Senate president is in charge of controlling. And they use that to, for manipulation purposes, to, dissuade people from doing what they don't want them to do and to persuade people to follow their lead. It is a system of reward and punishment, and it's unacceptable. That type of thing should not be happening. Our audit would not be able to insert ourselves into that kind of a process. We would be able to look at, again, process, procedures, if money is being spent, the way that they say it's being spent, and shine a light on that and make that public to everybody. And the fact that they don't want us to do that, and they're fighting this so hard and willing to break the law in order to hide what they're doing with our money, is really, really concerning. But what I can do is I can be very vocal about just the reality that I served 10 years as a state legislator before I ran for this position. I served 6 years as a state representative. I served 4 years as a senator. I had the most independent voting record in the Senate while I was there. And, I worked to the best of my ability for my community and did what I thought was the right thing with my votes and with my positions on different issues. But I can tell you it came at a great cost. There was constant retaliation, constant bullying, constant isolation. And that is what they do to try to control the members, to get them to vote against their communities, vote against their own value system, and to basically sell out to the establishment. And there are a lot of good people up there, Toby. There really are. There are a lot of good people who go in, who want to do the right thing, who, get into that, system up there And it's very overwhelming, and a lot of people don't feel like they have a different option. They don't feel like they're able to vote with their district against the leadership team. And it's because of retaliation, but it's also just because of just old-fashioned peer pressure. Old-fashioned peer pressure. I mean, I will tell you, I am persona non grata up on Beacon Hill. It's not fun for me anymore. When I go to work, I don't see people running over to me, like they used to, or like I would like them to, while I'm smiling and waving at them. They're looking at me like, get away from me. And it's not acceptable up on Beacon Hill for you to take a position that challenges the status quo, because they essentially circle the wagons when you do, and the word gets out, don't talk to her, don't talk to him. They're not one of us. They're an obstructionist, or they're, not able to work together with people. No, you're able to work together with people. You just don't want abuse of tax dollars happening. You can love your elected officials and still love transparency. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. But if you talk to the Speaker and Senate President, it's as though an audit is the enemy of the legislature. And I actually say, hey, I served there for 10 years. I think it would provide a great service for rank and file legislators, especially, to be able to see how things are getting done behind the scenes regarding the use of our tax dollars. A lot of your rank and file legislators don't even know. They don't even get access. Only 2 or 3 people have access.
It's amazing to me. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes the cover up is worse than the crime. If you ask me, like, if you got nothing to hide, what are you worried about?
Right.
Maybe they do have something to hide. Maybe there is, rampant corruption, and we don't know. And like you said, only a few people actually get to peer behind the curtain. So, until this is made right, then they are making the worst look towards the public they can possibly make. 72%, that's Democrats, independents, Republicans, conservatives, lefties, righties, everybody in between. That crosses.
Somebody said the other day, they go, man, you're really polarizing, huh? And I was like, polarizing? I said, what are you talking about? I'm like, this is the most unifying issue in the Commonwealth. I said, the only people that don't like me are the people that I work with right now in Beacon Hill, because they're scared of the bad decision that they made. And frankly, they're projecting it onto me. They made a decision to vote against following the audit law. They've made a decision to oppose the audit law that you voted for. And when I walk into the room, they look at me like I'm the embodiment of the vote, right? So, they might not like it, but 72%, like you said, Toby, is a pretty big number. And we brought together Democrats, Republicans, very, very strong progressives, very, very strong conservatives, and everybody in between, all the unenrolleds, all the independents out there, Green Rainbow Party, libertarians. People of all political stripes came together and worked together to support this initiative. This was unifying for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And the people who oppose this, the naysayers, are the establishment and their friends. They're the folks that already have the power and don't want to let it go. And if somebody's benefiting from one of their friends being in power, or there might be a lobbyist or something, and they need the Speaker or the Senate President to help them with their cause, those folks are not as supportive. You will hear people saying, oh, well, I didn't support that, and it's like, well, it's generally speaking, not everybody, but generally speaking, the people that are really strongly opposed to this, like angrily opposed to this, are the ones who are getting something out of it, to be honest, up on the Hill, in terms of political influence and, making sure that they are following the lead of the Senate President and Speaker and ingratiating themselves to them. And then other people might have voted against this because they thought there was a constitutional issue or something, but you won't see the passion against an audit coming from anybody besides the establishment and their friends who benefit from the establishment. Most people understand that an audit is an audit. And I got to tell you, Toby, at first, when we started first talking about this and they were opposing, I was sitting there essentially and saying, well, some of it could be that they're trying to hide something, but, a lot of this seems like it's just people in power trying to not let go of any power, and more of like a pride issue, where, well, do you know who they are? They're the speaker, they're the Senate president. They're not going to allow the auditor to come in and do an audit just because of arrogance, right? Now, while they are really arrogant in what they're doing, and that's true, now it's gotten to the point, Toby, where I can't believe anymore for a second that it's just about arrogance anymore. At the beginning, I thought it could just be their arrogance, and maybe there isn't anything to hide. Maybe they're just arrogant and prideful, and they don't want to let our office do our job just because they just want to show everybody who's boss. But now, after 72% voted for this, and every single community in the state said yes to question one, that's 351 cities and towns. That's more than 1 million people went out and voted for this. Now, for them to oppose this, when they're not just fighting the auditor anymore, they're fighting their constituents, they're fighting their own residents and their own voters on this. Now, I really do daily wonder, what are you so afraid of? Because we find challenges, Toby, in almost every single entity that we audit. Nobody's perfect, and human beings work in these state entities. So generally speaking, we find that there are processes and procedures that need updating. We can find that, the bank statement doesn't exactly match, what's according to their receipts. And we will show them the discrepancies and ask for them to fully document things moving forward to make sure that there's accountability. And that happens. And, again, humans, not robots, work in these state entities. So when we go into the legislature, we're not expecting perfection. We're not, going in, looking for, just any little thing just for the sake of looking for it. We go in to help make government work better. And if we find discrepancies, it's very simple to, just put that into an audit and say, here are the discrepancies, and we're going to ask you to fix these things. It's not an FBI investigation. We don't go in and raid, offices and toss through desks and take people's cell phones. We don't have that type of authority. I can't go in and confiscate somebody's computer. We ask for documents, and then we go through those documents and we make sure that, again, everything's being done in accordance with the law. And for people to outright refuse to turn over basic financial documents, state contracts, it is deeply, deeply disturbing on so many levels that they are going to this length to hide whatever it is that they're hiding from the taxpayers. Because you have to understand, everything that I audit is a matter of public record for you.
Right.
So when I audit something, it's not just the state auditor that gets access to it. It's all of you, the taxpaying residents of the Commonwealth, who get access. And we put it together for you in a nice, neat report. And we, put that out there for you so you can read about it in a more concise fashion. But all the documents that we get from them that are subject to public records for every other state entity, those become a matter of public record to you as well. And right now, the legislature exempts themselves from public records laws. So they are able to hide all of this information right now. And all we've asked for is financial documents and state contracts. And it's those very things that they're saying they believe they don't have to turn over. They're exempt from public records. They refuse to tell us how they're spending our taxpayer dollars and let us conduct an audit. And they're gaslighting the Commonwealth and basically telling us, oh, it's fine. They do support transparency. They do support an audit, but they're just not going to follow the law that you voted for. They're going to do their own version of what they want to do and tell you you're welcome. And that's not acceptable, Toby. It's not acceptable.
Getting back to the constitutionality of this, like the whole point of it being on the ballot proves it was constitutional, because apparently Attorney General Campbell had to go through the constitutionality of the question. I just had to go through the same thing with our ballot committee question to repeal Chapter 135, and they analyze it from a constitutional standpoint. And now to say that there's some sort of constitutional crisis to allow the auditor to come in and audit the legislature, I find incredibly ironic. And
The Attorney General also said that she voted for this ballot initiative, yet she's never spoken to me about it. She didn't support us at all during the campaign. But, once something passes by 72% of the vote, I understand the inclination to, try to demonstrate that you're not against what everybody voted for in your communities to the tune of 72%.
right.
But we are not getting any support from the Attorney General on the constitutionality issue. She is actually throwing water on this initiative right now and saying that even though she approved it for the ballot and let us spend a lot of campaign donations that went towards this ballot on getting this on the ballot, let us raise a lot of money. People made those contributions to something that the Attorney General's office approved for the ballot. Okay, she approved it. If it wasn't supposed to go on the ballot, shouldn't have been approved for the ballot, because you don't let people go out and spend countless hours, spend countless dollars, and then get over 100,000 signatures for an initiative that you're going to then potentially oppose on constitutional grounds once you just approved it and said it's constitutional, and then you claim you voted for it as well. Right now, the Attorney General has done nothing but throw water on this initiative, even though she claims she supported it. She does not indicate to me or to anybody else that she's going to do anything to enforce the law. And their office is dragging their heels in answering our questions. She alleges that we haven't answered her questions. We've done the best we can to answer her the best that we've been able to. But she will not answer as our Attorney General whether or not she's going to defend this law in court, whether or not she's representing my office as our attorney, and whether or not she's going to represent the people and sue the legislature. She will not even make a statement that the legislature needs to follow the law. So we are looking to our Attorney General to simply allow us to get a different attorney now at this point, because it's clear she doesn't want to represent the people on this matter. And it's clear that this is just a dragging of the heels. So we need the Attorney General to give us permission from her office to get our own attorney so that we can sue the legislature into compliance. And if there are constitutional concerns, let a judge say that. Let the process go through the way it's supposed to go through. But to block us from court, I mean, it is mind-boggling to people right now that we are able to be blocked from court, that the legislature calls this unconstitutional, yet they refuse to seek a Supreme Judicial Court opinion on this. They want to make the decision themselves and keep it away from the courts. Why? Because they're scared. Their arguments are bogus.
This whole thing is antithetical to how our government is set up in the beginning, of power of the people, right? Like Madison said, that the true fountain of power rests in the people, and that our representative form of government is there to represent us. And when they fail to do that, and then they cover up and they lie, or they fail to act on the will of the people, they have become tyrannical, and they are literally sitting there having their temper tantrum, or whatever you want to call it, their stalemate with the people that put them in office in the first place. And that, to me, is, I think, the most telling thing. And that was one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on the show. Yes, I want to get this message out. But frankly, I also want to put out there that if the people who desire their government act and represent them in government, and then they fail to do that, where does that leave us? Now, all of a sudden, the script has been flipped, because we are now the serfs and they are the ruling class at that point, and we have nowhere to go.
That's essentially what's happening here, Toby. It is. And I tell people all the time, you can be more liberal, you can be more conservative, right? I mean, this is a free state, right? Still, we get to choose where we fall on the political spectrum. We are going to agree, then we're going to disagree. I had very good relationships with my colleagues on the opposite side of the aisle, and sometimes we would vote together, and then other times we wouldn't. And, we'd shake hands at the end of the day and move on, because we understood it was, we had the same goals of helping people. We just had different paths to try to get there. And we understand that it's okay to agree, and then it's okay to agree to disagree. But what's happening on Beacon Hill right now is not that anymore.
Right.
What's happening is a dictatorial style of leadership, and I use that word, loosely. It's more like management on Beacon Hill that is very dictatorial, very authoritarian. It's like an authoritarian regime right now up there. And you have just a few people in power, threatening, retaliating, letting people know that if you don't vote for this, you're never going to get anything done for the rest of your career in the legislature. It's, manipulation tactic after manipulation tactic. And I will talk to legislators before they go in, Toby, and say, don't drink the metaphorical Kool-Aid, please, because you get in and you have all of these aspirations and all of these ideas and all these things that you want to do. And like I said, Toby, there's a lot of good people that go in that are very well intentioned, but they get in there and it is group think mentality. I liken it to a cult. And I liken it to a cult very often. I'm very open about the fact that I grew up in very conservative churches when I was younger. And while they did a world of good for me, and, helped my family to, put food on the table and really helped my mom. She was a teen mom when she had me, and she really relied on the church for a lot of assistance. There were some things that were really overboard regarding the control aspect. I remember, and I'll make this example, but it's an honest example, that I was listening to Whitney Houston one day, and it was like, oh my gosh, you're listening to Whitney Houston, you're going to hell, and I was like, what? Like, this is my favorite singer, and I like to sing. It was heartbreaking for me, and I remember feeling very oppressed and like, oh my gosh, like if I walk out of the house, I'm doing something wrong, and these people are gonna, punish and abandon and say, you're not one of us. And that's not healthy, that type of thing, that type of control, right?
Yeah.
So that it is that bad up at the State House right now, not saying they're saying don't listen to Whitney, but to the extent of it being about control and manipulation tactics and fear tactics, the same type of fear tactics that I sort of grew up with. I witnessed those when I was in the state legislature, and people will say to me all the time, like, well, why did you end up standing up and saying something? Why were you the one who was really pushing back and wasn't able to really tolerate that? And I've said, you know what, for all of the things that, I stepped away from, that I was raised in my childhood, I'm actually thankful that I had those experiences, because when I went into the legislature, I very quick, like I recognized the cult-like behavior in the legislature and the top-down power structure and the, do as I say, not as I do, the hypocrisy and the manipulation and fear tactics being used, and the, ability to ostracize and isolate people and distance them from the rest of the group if they do something that's perceived as bad to the leader. And it's not okay. It's very culty, and it's very much groupthink. And, I got triggered a lot when I was in the legislature with that cult aspect, where I was like, hey, whoa, that's like really a manipulation tactic, or that's really a fear tactic, and that's bullying, and that's not okay. And it triggered me. So I would say stuff a lot, and it wasn't easy to say stuff, but, worked up the courage to say what I needed to say as much as I could. And, now as the state auditor, I'm out. They would say, like, I made it out alive.
Yeah, it's ironic, because I have a very similar background. I wonder if that's why I'm so outspoken today. And I never really thought about it that way, but I've never been afraid to speak my mind. But I
Right.
will.
And sometimes we'll disagree, Toby, but at least we're free to disagree. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
At least we're free to
Absolutely.
have the conversation and to talk about things and to make progress and to come to a place where we can move forward on something. And not to be afraid to make our point and to speak the truth that we have in our hearts, to speak about how we feel about different things. Legislators don't have that privilege for the most
Yeah.
part.
I was
They
just going to
are,
bring that up. Yep.
yeah, they are essentially in a hostage situation. And, I'm not excusing taking bad votes at all. However, it does need to be said that, a lot of these really good people that go in there, they might be working with some not good people that are still in there that have been there for too long, who have gained too much power for themselves. And that influences them because those folks have all the power and all the influence, and people feel trapped and they make decisions that maybe they're not as proud of at the end of the day. But, it'll be justified away as, well, I needed to do this so I could get $50,000 for my local project, or I needed to take this vote so that I could get this because otherwise, I won't get my bill passed and they'll punish me. Or they'll take their stipends away, and you have people who have families and mortgages, or need to pay rent or mortgage like everybody else. And then they take a vote against the leadership team, and next thing you know, they have, $20,000 stripped from them because they have a chairmanship taken away from them, and they're shown that this is what you get if you do what's in your heart to do what your heart tells you to do is right.
And again, that's the part that drives me absolutely crazy about actual conflict of interest in accordance, or in violation, I should say, of state ethics laws. This was all, 1970s state ethics laws that were put on the books to prevent this exact type of behavior that is happening at the State House. And the smugness, the part that is really, driving me absolutely nuts about this whole thing is the 72% of the people who voted a certain way. And if government doesn't have to act on behalf of the will of the people, then we are lost. We have lost, like, Massachusetts has fallen, and we just don't know it yet. We're pretending, we're continuing a charade. And
it's really bad up there right now. It's in all honesty, it's really bad up there right now.
We just celebrated the 250th anniversary of the shot heard around the world, and the Battle of Lexington and the Battle of Concord. And this was, the people standing up to this level of tyranny and saying, not one more inch. No, like, you're not going to do that. And now all of a sudden we're still fighting the same battle 250 years later for a little bit different way and reasons, but still it's like, we have lost if they don't have to act on the will of the people, and they can just do whatever they want, and there's no accountability. And I know the saying, like, oh, well, you can vote them out of office. It's like, well, that's easier said than done in this state, maybe.
It is easier said than done, right? Because folks have wielded a lot of power. And if you have people who deliver for their districts and they're beloved in their districts, and they can keep getting elected in their home community, but they're making decisions that really hurt the rest of the state, you have a very small population of people electing someone like the speaker, for example, or the Senate president, for example, and it's not about them personally, by the way, it's about the roles, because regardless of who enters these roles, it's very consistently, the power is centralized to the speaker and the Senate president. But, for those folks that happen to be in there right now, their communities, I mean, they have strong support in their communities. So if they can keep getting reelected in their communities, then they've wielded all this power at the State House. They just need to keep winning reelection at their local level, and then they can dictate policy for the rest of the state, even though the rest of the state is not voting for them. So that is an issue. The legislature is supposed to be a system of shared leadership. The speaker is not supposed to have all of this power and all of this control.
I'm still here, even though my camera went out. I don't know. I don't know what that.
But
we got tech support.
It's supposed to be a system of shared leadership where the power is delegated to. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
I just went full screen.
The power is delegated across to all the state reps and all the state senators in a system of shared leadership where they're able to participate in a more equitable fashion so that their communities have more equitable representation. Meaning, just because your state legislator isn't, the most popular person up on Beacon Hill, doesn't mean that your district is going to get screwed over and that you're not going to get, money for your community center or money for your addiction resource center or money for your senior center or your public safety department or whatever it is, right?
Right. Right.
And that's, the speaker is supposed to be a facilitator of the happenings in the chamber and facilitate the conversation, not to be a dictator, and that's what it is now. It's a dictatorship. They've wielded so much power, and now it's to the point where a lot of reps and senators feel helpless and they just try to survive. And I will see a lot of them. And look, the folks that still talk to me in there, when they do talk to me, they just shake their heads because they know that if they even get seen talking to me, they're going to hear about it from the Speaker and Senate President, because the Speaker and Senate President don't want them even speaking to me. That's how bad it is. They will say to me, they'll say to me, "Oh, Diana, I love you and I get it, but I'm going to hear about it if they see me with you. So, just please, and I look at them like, and just, I feel very sorry for their circumstances, because how awful that you have a leadership team that is telling you, don't talk to her, don't be seen with her. I mean, this is a middle school playground up there at this point. It's worse than a middle school playground. So
the implications are,
don't talk to the auditor, and we're not going to participate and break the law. That way the Speaker and Senate President can be happy. That's what your state reps and senators are hearing right now. And it's
when was the last time the legislature was audited?
1991 was when former Auditor DiNucci, God rest his soul.
Joe
Amazing. Yeah, amazing auditor. Good human being from what I hear. I never got to meet him, but I just hear great things about him. Another Italian American, of course. And they put all the Italian Americans go to the auditor's office, apparently. We wave our hands.
Where do the liars go?
Washington, right? We throw punches a lot. But and he was a former boxer too, which I find just awesome. From people always saying, "You always throw punches." I'm like, I don't throw as much punches as Joe DiNucci used to throw, though. But former Auditor Joe DiNucci went in to conduct his routine audit of the state legislature back in 1991. And the Speaker at the time, that was the first time that there was significant pushback. And the Speaker at the time said, "Well, you're not auditing me," essentially. And the rest was history. Auditor DiNucci pushed back, fought the Speaker on it, tried to get the Attorney General at the time to help, didn't, really get a lot of help. It was more kind of like, okay, well, the law is ambiguous. Maybe they have to follow it. Maybe they don't have to follow it. We're not really sure. And Joe, at the time, the auditor, was, advised to file a bill and to advocate for its passage to make it so that it was, outright law. But obviously the same Speaker who didn't want to be audited was not going to allow that bill to get passed. So it never got passed, unfortunately. Fast forward years later, here we are. And it just kind of became the thought that these audits never happened, but they in fact did. And we're just trying to restore a practice that was always into existence before the early 90s. And as many know, after those audits stopped happening, coincidence or not, a period of unprecedented scandal and corruption followed in the state legislature with at least 3 indictments in the House of Representatives alone. So, lots of issues happening up on Beacon Hill. And, every Speaker comes in with this promise to increase accountability, and to put term limits on themselves and to, make sure that things are different when they get in, only for the term limits to be put in and then the term limits to be lifted by the same Speaker that puts them in. We saw, the Senate President come in and have the term limits lifted on her. Saw the Speaker come in, the former Speaker come in, instilled term limits in order to become Speaker. Then once he was Speaker, got rid of the term limits on himself.
Isn't this human nature? Like it's funny, like the tyranny kind of seems to be the natural outflow of power when you're given power and it's unchecked. It seems like you take that to the next level. You don't ever like rescind or narrow your power. You usually expand it and you wield it very well. And I'm not saying you, I'm saying human nature, it seems. And I find that to be the situation we're seeing here. And no matter what area of life that we control, we tend to try to expand our control over it. But that, I think, is endemic of this state house, or the leadership in the state house. When there is no accountability, they can just do whatever. Like, we saw bills come through the legislature that are unfunded mandates, which they're not legally allowed to pass. So what do? They suspend the rule that makes it so they can't pass the bill, right? That's what happened with Chapter 135. It was an unfunded mandate, and they just, we're going to suspend, I think it's Rule 10, which prohibits us from passing unfunded mandates. So at the end of the day, there really isn't any rules that they have to follow if they can just make them up as they go and change them with a majority vote in the legislature. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but doesn't that seem like
the rules always got suspended when I was in the legislature, constantly. So it was essentially, rules were made to be broken. It seemed to be, the motto for legislative leaders. We'll create these rules and we'll tell everyone we're going to be transparent, and then whenever we need to not follow them, we just won't follow them, and that's it. And it is it's challenging to get folks who are in there to understand the significant impact that has on the public's trust. But Toby, every time I talk to people in the community, it's a no-brainer. It is, again, look, the issue of increasing transparency and accountability with respect to, I'm just talking about basic public documents. I'm not saying, well, let's get in on every single conversation that's happening with everybody. No, I'm talking about, we need just like a basic semblance of transparency here in Massachusetts, and to just like come into a place where we are not last in the nation with respect to transparency. We get ranked dead last with respect to transparency in the entire nation, not subject to public records laws, not subject to open meeting laws. Bills are able to get passed in the middle of the night with no recorded roll call vote. People don't even know when committee hearings are happening. Bills are decided behind closed doors in conference committees, and legislators, themselves are not even given sometimes more than a matter of minutes to be able to make up their minds on bills that are over 100 pages in length, that have a significant impact on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and are required to take a vote on what's about to become law, and either be called an obstructionist and opposed to that law, or to vote for something, that might potentially have some unintended consequences in it. It's no way to govern. It's no way to legislate. And we are ranked dead last for transparency and accessibility. And last year, we were just also ranked the least efficient least effective, I should say, state legislature in the entire nation. So time to start getting our budgets done on time, folks. Time to open up the doors, clean out the cobwebs, and let's see what's going on. Because, we in the auditor's office, Toby, we are not here to come in to these entities just to tell people what they did wrong for the sake of doing so. It is literally the mission statement of the auditor's office: help make government work better. Help make government work better, not help destroy agencies, help to expose X, Y, and Z. No, it's help make government work better. And the way you help make government work better is you shine a light in the dark areas and help to, let everybody see where there is a need for improvement, so that we can fix areas where things are broken. You can't fix something that's broken if you don't know that it's broken. You can't, fix a problem that you don't even know exists, or that you haven't analyzed at all. You need to be able to see what's happening, and we need to be able to talk about these things together in a bipartisan fashion to try to present some solutions to help make our legislature work better. And they don't want that. Shame on every legislator who is opposing this audit right now and making excuses, because to refuse an opportunity, that the opportunity that this audit provides to shine a light on areas for improvement, that it's shameful that any legislator would have a problem with that and say, well, they don't want it. And then to make an excuse that they themselves know is bogus and say, well, you know, they think it's this or they think it's that. No, they know very well what an audit is by this point, you know, and what they're doing is they're trying to distort the message, and they're acting like it's campaign season all over again. They're acting like this is still up for debate. It's no longer up for debate. We debated this issue before it passed by 72% at the ballot.
Right.
You all made your decision. Now it's law.
I think you just touched on something that's, as a student of history, makes me very sad. You said we come in dead last as far as transparency and effectiveness in the legislature. And it seems like this system that is done entirely behind closed doors is done in a way because they know they're going to be rewarded for their behavior. They're not worried about that reelection. They're not worried. And maybe that is the point, right? That we should be focusing on, is everyone who doesn't stand for the will of the people should face a primary challenger, should face a, you know, opponent in 2026 and not be rewarded with their job back. They should get to go home and spend more time with the family or work, you know, on some things around the house. That's the way I see it. They shouldn't get to get their job back. And unfortunately, for the most part, I think most people aren't really paying attention too much to what happens. They're just putting their head down and going along with life, and whatever happens up there happens. And as long as they can tolerate the pain for a certain amount of time, then they'll just keep the status quo alive. And unfortunately, until that gets shaken up and we do actually have debate, like, talk about some of the most neutered people on earth, and it's the Republicans, because what is there, you know, 5 now senators and 26, I think, reps. I mean, they are totally just this. They don't have to give them the time of day, and everything's done behind closed doors, as you said, in committee. And then the floor vote is a joke. It's like bill number, you know, H 4972, the ayes have it. Bill number 4973, the ayes have it. There's no debate. There's no transparency. There's no openness. There's no, you know, we don't even know what the heck just happened. And they're just getting
it's really
5,
bad
6.
right now, Toby. It's really bad.
Yeah.
I wish I could say differently, but it's really bad right now. It's been bad for the last several years since I've been in, but it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. Power's gotten more centralized, and the brazen law breaking has really just, I mean, it put the arrogance on display, you know.
Real quick. I know we're short on time, and I want to be mindful of your time, and I appreciate all the time you've given us tonight. This has been a fascinating discussion. I know our listeners are enjoying it. And I heard you talk on one of the other shows, I think it was Mike Urban's or something, about a writ of mandamus. Have you had any success with that at all?
Not yet. We are still pursuing various legal options. It's taking some time because we've actually spoken to different attorneys. Different attorneys have not been able to come on board to help. We've tried to go the writ of mandamus route. We hit some roadblocks in our office on that, just procedural hurdles, legal procedural hurdles. I'm not an attorney, so one of the reasons why we have an attorney general, the attorney general is supposed to be doing the job that she's asking me to do right now, using my amazing psychology degree, everybody. I'm doing my best, but I'm an advocate. I'm your state auditor. I'm not an attorney. So what we're doing is we're really asking people who have the legal expertise, please feel free to contact me. You know, we are, you know, trying to find a path forward. We keep communicating with the attorney general and asking her to let us get our own attorney, since she has no interest in doing this. And, you know, in my opinion, she's just stalling the inevitable, because I don't believe at all that she's ever going to represent us in this case. So I just need her to say that and admit that to the general public and let us get our own attorney at this point, so that we can access the courts. Because by her not allowing us to get our own attorney, she is preventing us from getting access to the courts in doing so.
Now,
So
just a quick thought, and I know this might be, again, above our pay grade because I'm not an attorney, you're not an attorney, but does the individual voter who voted for this have standing to force some sort of writ of
someone did
mandamus?
that recently and tried to sue as an individual citizen, and the judge said they didn't have standing. So this is the type of thing that's happening. And again, it's, there are all sorts of legal procedural hurdles to overcome here in order to get access to the judiciary. So, the people that have the direct line to the judiciary is the legislature themselves. They could ask for an SJC opinion right now if they wanted to. They refuse to because they know the courts are going to call out, the ridiculousness of their claim that this is unconstitutional. So they're trying to keep, what's happening is they're trying to keep us out of court at all costs, Toby, at all costs. Keep the auditor out of court, keep the people out of court at all costs. Because once we get access to the court, look, we're not guaranteed to win this, but it's a path forward. We could get a judge who is willing to stand up for what the Constitution actually says and what the people have said is their express wishes. And that's their fear, is that their fear is that they're going to get a judge who will do the right thing. And I keep saying, look, I'm happy to go to court. I understand that it could go either way. We could get a judge that opposes the people too, but what other option do I have? They're breaking the law. The Attorney General refuses to enforce the law. We need access to the courts. It's our only remedy for relief and for adjudication of this matter. So, if folks want to help to, file a writ of mandamus to require that the Attorney General does her job, have at it. You can see on the Mike Urban show. Mike's connected with a few folks who are working on a writ on their own as private citizens. But it's been a challenge because even in that respect, you have people coming together who they themselves are saying that they are facing some legal procedural hurdles in trying to file this writ of mandamus. So really, if our elected officials would just do the right thing, this we could just move forward.
Yeah, we looked into something similar when Maura Healey signed her emergency preamble 71 days after the fact of signing Chapter 135 into law to kind of short circuit the will of the people. And we were going to have the law suspended until the voters got a chance to vote. And, that was too much to bear. She had to get involved in that process as well. And, honestly, we were looking into that writ of mandamus, but frankly, they're not even really using that in this state anymore. Unfortunately, the whole writ has been kind of collected into all the other writs, the habeas corpus and everything else. And it kind of got folded into this. I don't even think it's been used in decades in Massachusetts, but even still, it's really just a force to have one form of government tell the other form of government to do their job.
Right.
And, that's unfortunate that remedy isn't available to the people even at this point. So, I see it.
I understand the Attorney General, that she clearly doesn't want to represent the people on this. Yeah. I'm just asking that she at least let somebody else represent the people on this so that we can get access to the court. Because to just continue to, ask us to answer more and more and more questions that we're doing our best to answer, but they're not good enough answers for her is essentially what she's saying. She's saying, well, you responded, but you didn't really answer my question. We're doing our best. And I actually publicized our responses because we don't have a huge legal team in the Office of State Auditor. I have a general counsel. There are a few attorneys who work on audits, but we don't have the attorneys working for us like the Attorney General's office does. We're literally going to them saying, hi, will you help to build the legal case to make sure that the legislature stops breaking the law? We need your help. Please be our attorneys. And they're looking back at us and saying, you're not doing a good enough job putting together a legal analysis of your issues. So we're not going to help you because it's not good enough to convince us to enforce the law. Give me a break. It is nothing but excuses. So, we are at this point very well aware that, the Attorney General does not intend to represent us. I would be shocked if the Attorney General decided to represent us in this matter. I am essentially just trying to get her at this point to allow us to get a special assistant attorney general so that we can, again, just get access to the court. We want access to the court. We want to be able to make our case. And if she doesn't want to represent us, or she doesn't think that our legal argument's good enough for her, fine. Let somebody else represent us then.
Let the courts decide that.
Good enough. Let somebody else represent us, and we'll take our little, argument that we've been able to make without your help. We'll take it to the judge, and we'll do our best without you. But let us get access to the court is all we're asking.
So 2 things. One, why don't you tell everyone what it is we can do to help you do your job? And before you do that, though, I'd love if you would just tell us what you're working on as far as, what audits do you have going on now? What agencies does, if you can, I don't know if you can or can't, but and if you can, great. I just out of curiosity, love to know what agencies you mentioned, the South Boston Convention Center, which, by the way, they have an incredible security team, because we staged there on Saturday at 3 a.m. before we recreated the midnight ride from Boston to Lexington. And we all met there on motorcycles. So it was like 50 motorcycles. They were right on us, like, you can't be here. And we're like, well, we're just meeting. Give me a minute, and they did. But anyway, so what are you working on?
There are a lot of great workers at these places that we audit. And every time we audit, we have to go in and let people know, look, we're not here to, come into every single employee interaction, and try to find fault. We audit process procedures. We'll look at if employees are being trained appropriately, right? And if they're given the right resources and all those different things. But I'm glad to hear that your experience went well. That's good. Most of our issues at the Convention Center Authority were actually management related and related to inappropriate and unlawful contracts being given out by the former management team there, unrelated to the employee interactions. And I'm glad you had a good time. I'll let them know next time I go to the convention center that they did a good job. But we audit different entities like that. Right now we're actually getting ready to release, we have dozens of audits in the works right now. We are auditing the Cannabis Control Commission right now. We are auditing the emergency shelter system right now, and taking a look at some of the issues there. A lot of people have asked if we can do a full forensic financial audit of that. The answer is no. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources. The system is too big at this point for us to go and just cast a wide net and see if anything comes back. It would take all of our office's resources essentially, but we are able to hone in on the high risk areas that people have raised to us about the emergency shelter system and take a deeper dive into some of those areas. So we've been doing that, and that will be released shortly. Just will stay tuned. Stay tuned.
And where can people go to find the results of your audit? Is it right on the state website under
mass.gov/auditor? And then you click down and it just says, find an audit report. And you can just click on the button that says the audits, and it'll list all the audits.
That's awesome. And then last but not least, how can we help you get this across the finish line?
Call the Attorney General. Tell her I asked you to call. I'm sure she'll be thrilled.
Now, you better be careful, because you might get an Office of Ethics violation letter from the State Ethics Committee for urging people to call the state auditor, like Sean Crevier did about calling the legislature. But hopefully that's not the case. And
well, look, I will say this: I'm an elected official. I am, I am able to advocate in this way, and call your state legislators. Call the Attorney General, call the governor. The governor, I'm asking the governor, use the bully pulpit of the governor's office to stand with us on this issue. She has made a passing comment, when pushed on this, that sure, people should follow the audit law, but that's it. And we really need our governor to stand up on this and to help. I've asked the governor and the Attorney General to help, to stand with us. we just haven't received the assistance the way that I wish we would have on this. But please
Yeah.
call and advocate and let them know that we would like them to stand with us. And the Attorney General is really the one. I'd like the governor to stand with us and use the bully pulpit of our governor's office to say that she in no way, shape, or form will ever sign something that will change in any way the audit law. I'd like her commitment on that, you know, because it's, to me, only a matter of time before the legislature tries to overturn this law. And I would like our governor to commit to not signing anything that would change this audit law. It's a very simple law. It just says that they have to follow, they get audited the same way everyone else is. And if they amend it in any way, it would be to give them some sort of an exemption, you know, or special privilege in regard to these audits. No, they should be audited like everybody else. That's what you voted for. So we want the governor's commitment on that. And we want the Attorney General to simply at this point just stop obstructing our access to the courts. You know, we understand she doesn't want to represent us. Please stop obstructing our access to the courts. Please move on then to whatever it is that, you know, she feels she wants to focus on more than this, and let us get our own attorney. Just let us access the courts. Let us access the courts and stop obstructing our access to the court system. That's what we're asking for at this point. So if you can call and advocate, that would be great. The sooner we get access to the courts, the sooner me and my colleagues and I can move forward on Beacon Hill without this big elephant being in the room everywhere we go.
Well,
I'd very much
72% of the people have spoken. 72% of the people have spoken and are on your side. Keep doing what you're doing. Diana DiZoglio, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Toby, for having me. It's been
You
great.
did a great job, and we're on your side, and we're pulling for you. We're praying for you. We're rooting for you. We're going to call the Attorney General's office for you, and let's not back down. I know you're not going to. It's pretty obvious, and we appreciate you fighting for us here in Massachusetts.
Thank you, Toby. I
Thanks
appreciate
much.
you. Thanks, everybody, for watching.